Um, Today's class is sponsored by Colleen in honor of her birthday. So thank you for the sponsorship. So today, we're going to do my personal favorite kind of learning. So it's always fun for me. Hopefully it will be enjoyable for you. In general, all throughout Jewish history, from the beginning of Jewish history, there's sort of been two different. I wouldn't say it's not really camps or groups. It's just two different ways of using your mind. There's intense, like Talmudic scholarship, which is it's a very rational, logical method of thinking. If you want to learn Gemara, you have to learn these principles. You have to understand like halakhically how things are built. There's rules and logical principles that are then used and applied to the material, and it takes a lot of brain work, and Gemara students who have really like dedicated themselves to that task often do very well in other scenarios where that require a very high level of intellectual rigor, because it is quite rigorous. There's often very long like logical trees that you need to follow to get to the conclusion. And so there have always been scholars that have been sort of focused on halachic Gemara side of things, and then there are people who are maybe more. There are the writers who write about ethics and morals. They're really not related, right? There's like the halacha, which is the strict law, and then there's like the ethical writers, the people who deal with Kabbalah, mysticism, even Musar. It's very separate from the halacha, right? And one of the things that's really awesome about Chassidus is when it marries these two ways of thinking together. And this began, all of the Chabad Rebbeim were all like really geniuses in both what we would call Nigla, the study of Gemara, the study of halacha. Alter Rebbe obviously wrote his Shulchan Aruch, and Tzemach Tzedek corresponded, had a lot of correspondence regarding halachic matters. So like they were all huge scholars in Talmud, and at the same time, huge scholars in the inner life of the Jew, the mystical elements of our, and the more spiritual side of our religion. Because sometimes we feel sort of like these two things are divorced within us. Like, oh, there's like the halachic side, but that doesn't feel very spiritual, right? It feels sort of like rules and regulations, but that's not where we feel our spirituality. And then there's like the more spiritual things that we do. But the Chabad Rebbeim always really married the two together. And in a lot of the Rebbe's Sichos and Maimarim, you'll see that they would go through like a pilpul, an idea in Gemara, or like go through the nuances of an idea in halacha, and then show how this really represents a deep spiritual concept that applies to us on a you could say like on a feeling level as well, not just purely a dry halacha concept. So this week's parsha is Parshas Mishpatim, and the parsha is quite what you might call dry parsha. It deals with like laws of like liabilities, damages, things like that. Which, unless you want to have like fun and like thinking about it in that way, it's not so exciting for most people to think about. Oxes goring, falling into pits, things like that. It's just not that. It doesn't feel so relevant. Even though it is very relevant when it comes to damages, we all deal with these things on a daily basis. You borrow something from someone, you lend something to someone, you rent something from someone. What are these laws, right? But it doesn't feel like very connected to our Jewish spiritual life. And in this sikha, we're going to discuss. The Rebbe really pulls these two together. How these ideas of damages can really correspond with our spiritual life. My father actually taught Mishpatim to fourth graders for years and years and years. And he turned it into the most exciting parsha that you can imagine. He had like these running characters that ran through the whole thing. And these 9-year-old boys loved the story of Mishpatim. There's the guy in the ox who had the ox narrow, whatever it was, but he managed to make it very exciting. So we're going to see if we could get breathe some light into these ideas and see their spiritual relevance. Okay, so on the first page, we just have the source from the parsha. I'm not going to go through it inside. because it's long. But basically, in the parsha, it starts talking about different rules of damages and liability, right? So we all have, let's say, ownership of some stuff. And then we also live in a world where we interact with other people. So what happens when you lend something to someone? What happens if you want someone to watch something for you? What happens if you want to borrow something from someone, right? What happens if you're just being a nice neighbor and you say, oh, I'll check in on your house because you're going on vacation for a few weeks, right? Like, what are the rules of, where is the liability of each person? There's the person who owns the object and the person who is interacting with the object, right? So those are our people that we're talking about. And going through this whole idea in the Torah, the Mishnah comes up that there are basically 4 categories, okay? So I'm going to read the Mishnah inside. I know not everyone has a source sheet, but I'm just going to read the Mishnah inside. It's short, okay? So it says, Arba'a Shemer Meim. There are 4 types of guardians, watchmen. Shemer Chinam. There is the unpaid watchman. The Hashayel, there's the borrower. Naisei Schar, there's the paid watchman. The Hasayfer, and the renter. So we just listed them. Now we're going to talk about a little bit what their liability is. Shemer Chinam, and I'm going to go through this again. So if you can't get it straight over here, it's fine. Shemer Chinam Nishpa al Hakol. The Shemer Chinam can make an oath on everything. I'll explain what that means. The Hashael Mishalim al Es Hakol. The borrower needs to pay for everything. The Naisei Schar, the Hasayfer, and the paid watchman, and the renter Mishpatim al Hashvura al Hashvuya al Nisa. They can swear on cases of sickness, captivity, and death. Mishalmin Esaveda Esaneva, and they pay for loss or theft. Okay, so we're going to split these categories up because there's a lot of words. So we have 4 categories of watchmen. Our first category of watchmen is a Shemer Chinam, an unpaid watchman, right? So again, back to our example, I don't know, you have a cat, okay? You have a cat, and you're going out of town for a few weeks, and you have a good friend who says, I'll do you a favor, I will take your cat for the few weeks that you go out of town, right? So what happened? One day you walk into the room and the cat is dead. Oh no, you killed the cat. You were supposed to be watching the cat died. Are you responsible? Do you need to buy a new cat? So the answer is that if you are the Shemer Chinam, that means you were doing him a favor and you were watching the cat, right? You are not responsible for the cat's death, okay? And you do not need to pay him back. Why? Because you were doing this person a favor. Are you getting any benefit from watching the cat? No, right? All the benefit is on the person who owns the cat, right? You were watching the cat for him. If there's a case of clear negligence, for example, you left a bowl of poison on the floor and the cat consumed it and died, then you are liable. So if you were very overtly negligent, then you are liable to pay. But unless you were overtly negligent, you are not liable. So that means any sort of scenario that if you left the front door wide open, maybe that's called negligence. But if the cat manages to get outside some other way, you're not negligent, you're not liable, right? So the Shemer Chinam, the unpaid watchman, has the least level of liability. Why? Again, because he's not getting anything. He's not benefiting. Then we have the paid watchman. So similar kind of scenario, except you drop him off at the cat hotel, right? So I think there are pet hotels. I've seen them in the neighborhood. they recently been like, this is like peak LA. It used to be like a play space for kids on 3rd Street, like across the street from the fire station. Yeah. And now it's a play space for dogs. So that's where we are. But so there are hotels, right, for cats. What is a hotel for cats? That's like a Shemer Sachar situation, right? It's a paid watchman. So who's benefiting in this scenario? Both parties, right? Because I'm benefiting that my cat is being watched, and the hotel is benefiting that they're receiving payment. Also, an added benefit to me, in a sense, when I am putting the cat in the hotel, my expectations are automatically going to be higher. I expect better care. Why? Because when I'm paying, that's what I'm doing. I'm getting for myself. I'm acquiring for myself. I'm paying for better care, right? So that means what happened if similar scenario, they walk in and the cat is dead, right? So this case, we would have to maybe start bringing a vet into the picture and like start establishing why did this cat die? Is your cat, how long do cats live? 9 minutes. Yeah, right. Is the cat like 50 years old? And I don't know how long cats live, but like, is it old and it just died of old age? Did it have some sort of lingering medical issue, right? Or, so was its cause of death unavoidable, right? Which it may have been unavoidable, in which case, if you go through the system and you rule that this death was unavoidable, is he liable? No, because you can't make someone liable for an unavoidable death, right? But if it was avoidable, if there was any element over here that was avoidable, so at the cat hotel, they overfed the cat, or they exposed the cat to another cat that was sick, or whatever it was, right? If this was in any way avoidable, I am negligent. So I am liable. So the cases it brings in the Mishnah is if it was captured by gunpoint, you're not responsible because you're not expected to give up your life for. In this case, it was more likely a cat with the cat that they were, putting a gun to your head to steal it. But if it was stolen, you are responsible. Like at middle of the night, someone came in and stole it, you're responsible. You should have locked up it, right? So that's sort of the difference. Okay, yeah.
Can you give an example of something that the paid watchman would be responsible for that the cleaner wouldn't? Like it's not negligence, but
right. It being stolen is a good example.
But like to what it's meaning.
It was stolen. Like we said before, if it was captured by gunpoint, you're not responsible. You're not supposed to give up your life. But any other way that it was stolen or lost, it's
but what if there wasn't negligence?
It doesn't matter. That's the point.
Okay.
The fact that you're being paid takes away from your lack of negligence, right? It sort of takes away from that responsibility, right? So let's say back to the unpaid watchman. If it came in and if someone came into your house and stole it, you would be responsible because you weren't necessarily negligent. Even if it got lost, right? The cat escapes or the animal escapes, you're not responsible, right? It's only in case of very open, clear negligence that you would be responsible. All right. So those are our first two categories. Category number 3, we went to the first extreme of the unpaid watchman, right? So he has the least responsibility. Now we're going to the one with the most responsibility, which would be the borrower, right? You borrow something from someone, you are totally responsible for anything that happens to it. The only time that you're not responsible for something that happens to it is one, if you're just using it with regular use and it breaks, right? So if you borrow someone's coffee machine and you use it exactly as the instructions say to use it and it breaks, you can't be held responsible, right? But if you did any little thing wrong with it and you're using it a little bit differently, then you're not responsible. The other thing, which is very interesting, is that if the owner is present, you're not responsible because they see, I guess you can say the owner sees exactly what's going on and they're sort of in the room together thinking, so you're no longer responsible. But any other scenario, you borrow from someone, you're responsible.
What if you pay to use it?
That's a borrower. That's an exit, right?
So
renting the renter.
What if you're borrowing the coffee machine and someone rubs it from you at gunpoint?
You're responsible. You still have
At
to pay for it, even at gunpoint, because you have to pay for it. Because first of all, let's say it was your own thing, you would need to replace it for yourself, right?
Right.
We're not saying you need to die for it, but it's still as long as it's in your possession, you're responsible, right? So, like you borrow a car from someone, you expect it to be returned to you exactly the way you lent it, right? With the exact same amount of gas in it, right? And if there's any new little dent, they're responsible for it because they borrowed it. I think like the way that we think about it is who is receiving any benefit? Who's receiving benefit? Does the person who lends something to somebody receive any benefit? No, it's an altruistic act to lend something to someone, right? You're not receiving any personal benefit, so the other person receives benefit, so they have to be responsible, right? But then we have our last category, like you just said, oh, but what if you're paying for it? Then we have our renter. So when it comes to the renter, there's actually there is a debate. So Rabbi Yehuda says that the renter is actually like a shomer Yehuda. He is like a unpaid watchman. And Rabbi Meir says that the renter is like a shomer sucker, that he has the same liability as the paid watchman. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, that means that if you rent something, if anything happens to it, unless there was very clear and obvious negligence, you are not responsible, right? And Rabbi Meir says that he's like a shomer sucker, that he is like a paid watchman, which means that he has more liability, right? That if you're renting something, you would have to pay if it was stolen or if it was lost, right? So we have to try to understand that reasoning a little bit. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say that it's like a unpaid watchman and not liable with renting? Rabbi Meir says that you are like a paid watchman. So in general, the fact that renter is its own category is strange. Shouldn't it just like be, if it has the same ruling as another category, shouldn't we just like stick it in as like a subcategory? So if we believe that it's like a shomer kingdom, so subcategory of shomer kingdom is renter, or if we believe that it's like a shomer sucker, a paid watchman, then subcategory of shomer sucker is the renter. So how come we also are listing it as arba shomer for watchmen? Okay, so these are our questions. I know this is like, if you have something to like write down, it might be a little easier. It's a little bit like I'm holding a lot of ideas in your head, but I think I have faith in everyone. Okay, so let's try to understand why we have this difference of opinion, right? Why we have this difference of opinion between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, what is he saying? He's saying that a renter. So who is receiving benefit as a renter? Both parts, right? You're renting, there are people who make their whole business renting things out, right? They buy things with the intention of renting them out. That can be an entire business, right? I am making money. The renting could be my business, right? And the people who rent things are able to then use that, right? You rent the property, you rent a car, you're able to use it, and you're able to have full benefit of it, and you're paying to rent it. So he says that these two levels of benefit sort of just cancel each other out. Right? And therefore, it's like a shomer kingdom. It's like an unpaid watchman. It's like and therefore, because I'm paying for it, I don't have extra liability. Rabbi Meir, though, disagrees with this logic, and this is the accepted halacha, is according to Rabbi Meir. What does Rabbi Meir say? Rabbi Meir says, why does the object enter into the renter's domain? This is Gemara way of thinking. Why is the object entering into the other person's domain? For whose benefit is it entering into the other person's domain? It is for the renter's benefit, right? I only rent something. The thing only came into my Dalet Amos because I benefited from it. As a side point, is the person who I'm paying maybe benefiting from it? Yes, but I am the main benefactor of it because it's coming into my domain because I rented, right? And so basically, what does he say? He explains that a renter is actually like a borrower. And what am I doing? What is my payment? The role of my payment is actually just to lower my level of liability, right? So I'm borrowing the object, and then I'm paying money to say, no, I'm not actually a borrower. I'm just lowering my level of liability. I'm paying to now be on the level of a shomer sucker, of a paid watchman, and I'm not responsible for some things. I'm only responsible for other things.
Like insurance.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's insurance. The payment is insurance, and it's basically just, that's what changes my it just changes my level of liability. So this is how we understand. Then the Gemara, when it's asking, oh, how come we have 4 categories? And if we just ask them, they just be subcategories. The Gemara explains. So actually, it's its own little category. Really, it's sort of like a transitional category between the borrower, and the paid watchman is this other category, is this category of renter. And then the Gemara concludes, so we have four watchmen, but the halachas about them are three, right? So we have four watchmen, but the way that we paskin about them is three basic ways of how we say that they have responsibility or liability. Fair so far? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this concept and we're going to sort of plug it into a spiritual concept. So the Shalach explains, he writes in his book on Pesach, I believe. He explains that this idea of four watchmen represents the four different types of our own personal avodah in this world and how we're going to choose to interact with this world. So it's a very interesting point that we're going to make over here. Oftentimes, how do we think of free choice? We think of free choice as, okay, in the moment, I have a choice to decide. Am I going to do something good or am I going to do something bad? Right? That's in our minds what we think about free choice, right? And so when we mess up, I had the free choice to make the right decision and I didn't choose that, right? That's generally, I think, the way we think about it. What this perspective is going to teach us is that free choice is not really so much in the moment. Our free choice is more about what is my overall perspective of how I approach my life. That's often more where I'm making a choice in my mindset of how I view my life over just that momentary decision-making process, right? And he explains, Hashem created the world. He said, I put you into this garden, l'shamar, to watch over it, right? So what happens to us? Hashem created us to be the watchmen of this world. And so we're not just here to hang out and have fun, but we're actually here to be the watchmen of the world, to impact the world, to take care of it, to be caretakers of this world. But like we said, there are different types of watchmen. And our choice in which type of watchman that we choose to be impacts the whole way that our relationship with Hashem works. So let's start off with our Shiner Cleanup. This is our most altruistic level of watchman, right? Someone who's really just doing a favor for somebody else. So you can say that there are people, and this is a very, very high level, and most of us are not there yet, right? But there are people who understand that, okay, Hashem created this world as a garden, and my entire role is just to be a caretaker over it. Am I getting payment for it? I'm not thinking about getting paid for it, right? I'm just here to watch over the world. And I'm going to give myself over to do whatever I need to do to take care of the world. Like we said, very high level, not thinking about yourself, just accepting the mission of being God's caretaker, right? Then you can have the paid watchman, right? I'm going to take care of the world. I want to take care of the world. I understand that there's a mission for me here, but I'm not at that level where I can feel like I can just do it for nothing. So I expect a little bit of retribution, or compensation would be a better word. Thank you. Right? I expect a little bit of compensation. I expect to be paid. I want something in return for my caretaking of the world. Then we have, it's interesting, we have the borrower. The borrower this is where our difference between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda comes into play. The borrower, who is the borrower seeking, the renter. That's where we have our difference, right? We have our renter. Who did we say? What is the purpose of the renter? It's for himself. What does he do? He just happens to pay so that he can lower his level of liability, right? So similarly, we have people who live in the world and I'm living my life for myself, but then I also recognize that there's a God. I got to make some space for spirituality in my life because I recognize that that's something that's true, and I will be a watchman as a payment for my enjoying life, right? And then lastly, you can have the borrower. And the borrower is just like, okay, there's this world. I'm going to enjoy whatever's here, right? It's over here. It's out there for me, and then I don't need to pay for it. It's all here for free, and I don't need to put anything in to make the world a better place. I'm just borrowing this world. It's all very temporary and fun. And the interesting thing that this is like the Rebbe points out. It's a very Rebbe way of thinking, a very positive way of thinking. He says the borrower, they have a basis for their for this belief. It says that Hashem promised Avram that all his descendants should be able to take part in the beauty of the world and in the wonders of the world. So just by being a descendant of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, you have a right to the pleasures of the world. So you could live on this level of borrower, and you can live your life on this level of borrower. But like we said before, what am I doing when I'm choosing any of these sort of tracks of life? I am making a choice that this is what I want my level of liability to be, right? So Hashem says, okay, you want to live life and have a good time, right? And just like your entire focus being on yourself, that you're borrowing this world and it's all there for you to take. Just remember that what is the borrower's level of liability? If you just take, right? Then how do I expect to receive it back at the end? I expect to receive it back at the end totally the same, without a single blemish, right? Which means I can hold you responsible for any blemish, right? So we think of Hashem being like, we think of the picture of Hashem being very exacting and being like, going through your life and judging every moment of your life and judging every single choice that you made. That's only happening if I made the choice to be a borrower, right? If I make the choice to be a borrower, then the owner who lent it to me is not very forgiving at the end of the day when it comes to me giving it back, right? So that's the decision I'm making, right? I can choose to live my life as a borrower, but then it also means that my liability goes up. Or I can choose to live my life, let's go to the opposite extreme. I can choose to live my life completely and totally dedicated to Hashem, which is the case of the Shemer Chinam, right? The free watchman. I'm here purely to guard the world. And then Hashem gives us a lot more if you're able to go to that space where I give myself over completely to the mission. Am I still a human being? Yes. So are there situations that might come up where I might mess up a little bit and things might happen and some damages might happen? Yeah, but guess what? Because I made this choice to be totally given over to God, and that's like my entire mindset, and that's my personal vision for my life. Hashem is able to be much more lenient with me because I've changed my level of liability by making this choice to be given over to Him, right? So there's a lot more leeway. It's funny because you think like, oh, someone who's good, they don't mess up, but the point is like they have a little more leeway to mess up in the way this world. This is how I'm choosing to guard God's word, and so He will pay us back in kind, right? And then we have the last two categories over here, where we have either a person who is not yet at the level of just like totally giving himself up for Hashem, and he still, is expecting some sort of payment. Or we have, like we said before, the person who wants to enjoy, but also recognizes that there's a God and recognizes that he has to pay a little for his usage of the world. So again, whichever level that we sort of plug ourselves into, that's what we get back, right? So if I am living my life again, not totally given over, but some things here, some things there, right? I'm looking for payment for this. So Hashem says, okay. So again, looking at it very, very equally, very and that. Yeah, like that's sort of just like, okay, so in this situation, you did this for me and I did this for you, right? It's a little bit of like a tit for tat type of scenario. But we receive back, and we receive back the judgment at the level which we plug ourselves into. So it's just like a little, I think it's something just to think about, like, how do I view myself in this world, right? What kind of guardian am I of this earth, and how am I taking care of Hashem's world and Hashem's garden or whatever you want to call it, right? Hashem's plan. And where do I put myself into that? How do I see myself in that picture? And based on that is how much liability I have when things go wrong, when things go right? Like it's all going to be paid back to me on that level. This is just a little bit of a delving deeper into something that's halachic. That seems like the details seem like a little dry, but then even though it could be fun. But then when you go a little deeper, you can understand the relevance on a spiritual level as well. And just after I learned the Sikha to prepare for this class, I actually got in, I signed up for when Tweet Freeman has new articles. And he actually wrote about this week very beautifully. Just the second part about the 4 Watchmen. So if anyone wants to look that up, because he wrote about it very beautifully and put it really well. So I'm just putting out a plug for that article. I think it was called, let me see. It's going to come up on the homepage because it's like the new article of the week. But it is called 4 Ways to Live a Life. Yeah, look it up. And here, really well.
Yeah, you definitely turn something very mechanic into
Yeah.